social media, and I'm really an advocate for it. A lot of people are like, oh, it's the worst thing ever, etc., etc., etc. For me, because I grew up like so isolated, I didn't have any social media till I was 18,
Mm,
which was way too late, if I'm honest, because I think if I had it before then, it would have been such a saving grace for me, because some of my closest friends are people I've never actually met and I speak to virtually. I'm on there every day talking to just random people on my stories, etc., etc. And it's such a great place for me to go. And I curate who I follow. Like I'm very, people are like, oh, there's so much toxic stuff. I keep seeing models. So stop following them. Just unfollow them. Have that sense of discipline to be able to use social media properly by
mm,
following the people who educate you in a healthy way. And that can change over time. People can change over time. There's a
yeah,
recent holistic health follower who just started getting a bit angry with her posts, and I was like, I'm not getting a good feeling off this. We're gonna, that's a break for me and you for now. She doesn't know about it. Nobody cares. But it's important that what I see on there, because I'm on there a lot, it's part of my job.
sure.
um it's important that what I see on there is healthy to me, and that is good for my brain. Now, when things that I call the feminists and the feminangrists
Hmm.
pop up, obviously there are specific accounts that dedicate their whole profiles to that kind of stuff. um I'd say I swear from a lot of them. I just avoid. But some of them I do, because I think it's interesting to get the viewpoint of where people are at, and I think it's important for me to stay up to date with how people are feeling culturally, and their approach to the world from a social perspective,
Yeah.
because I think very differently to a lot of people. So it's good for me to stay a little bit grounded in that sense and be mindful about what I post, because
Hmm.
hate is one of those things you have to deal with when you're online. When in the UK we get sort of the odd kidnapping or murder or rape, the social media goes absolutely mental, goes completely men hating, and
Mm,
it's really destructive. And I actually have to come off every time that's happened. I've noticed, like, it gets me so worked up. I just come off social media completely for a few days, because I can't cope with it,
yeah.
because it becomes so negative. And it's the same with other big, massive. I don't watch the news, so um, it's important for me that I'm not overwhelmed with that. My mental capacity doesn't, and emotional capacity doesn't, can't handle that very well.
Sure, sure.
Um, so I come off the site, and then I actually have conversations with Alex about it, about particularly the relationship women have with their attitude towards men now, and we talk quite thoroughly about these kind of things, and we try and have level conversations, because obviously part of my heart is hurting that somebody's lost their life, and part of me is hurting because it's resulted in anger rather than healing.
Mm,
So yeah, for me, it really is just a sense of withdrawal, and I haven't necessarily found a way around that. And I don't think it's gonna be helpful for me to suddenly start, spouting out the opposite to what everybody's feeling. But I do absolutely weave in. I've got several posts on my Instagram that are specifically about the issues that men are facing and the attitude towards men. I talk about it on the stories every now and then,
yeah.
because I am, it's important. I have this very much approach with my Instagram now, that if you don't like what I have to say, don't follow. It's so easy to
Correct.
do. You have no excuse to sit there and, hate all my content. Just go away. I don't care. It doesn't make a difference. I literally don't have notifications on anywhere on my phone. I don't know when someone follows me, when someone unfollows me. It doesn't interest me. Um, yeah, I guess that's sort of how I feel about it. Is very
Okay.
much from a sense of self-discipline. I think you have to be like that now with technology, otherwise it can
Yeah.
just consume you.
Yes. No, I couldn't agree more, especially in that last part. Um, yeah, I have to say, I find it very interesting that it seems to be, and I don't think this is necessarily a man woman thing. Just when you hear things that you don't agree with, this idea that they just shouldn't exist.
Mm,
I actually think this is just my opinion. I don't mind hearing opposing viewpoints on virtually anything, and I think it leads to interesting conversations, because I think it's important to hear again viewpoints that maybe are not your own. I think we can all learn from each other. It's not based on your age, your ethnic background, where you grew up. those kind of things. I think you can learn a lot from each other, but we have to be willing to listen, even when we can vehemently disagree on certain things.
Yeah.
But to your point about sort of taking that time away, I'm a very big believer in that. I have clients that at times struggle with the abundance of information that one can consume and
Mm.
might feel overwhelmed. And so I am usually a very big advocate to say, and I like the word you use too, because I say that too. I talk about a lot about emotional and mental capacity.
Yeah.
You only have so much of it each day, right? And you got to replenish it through your good coping. If you have good coping, you'll replenish it so you can tolerate more the next following days. My coping's not good, probably not. And so it's important for me to understand that I have limits to how much I can take. So for example, it might say there's several issues going on in the world. I have a lot of interests, I have a lot of causes that I care about, but I have to also understand I'm not going to be able to equally care about all of them. It's not a bad thing to say that. And
Yeah.
I would say that because you matter, you're the most important person in your story, and we need you to be here. If you get so overwhelmed by all these different things that you're consuming and you're inundating
Yeah.
yourself with, you might become hopeless,
Yeah.
cynical, apathetic, all these different negative terms that I would say sort of take you out of the fight. If you want to see change, I always talk about being the change that you want to see, then you need to be able to be engaged. You need to be able to have good emotional and mood regulation. You got to have emotional capacity to see some heinous things happening and not always fall apart because of
Yeah.
it, or run from the fight, or not want it to engage, to try to
Yeah.
be a part of that change. But it's also okay at the same time to say, I'm not going to be in every single fight. I'm not going to be arguing against every single person that has an opposing viewpoint from me. Why?
Yeah.
Because I got to also take care of myself.
Yeah.
If I'm going to have proper self-care, which I haven't, surprisingly, this is the first time I've said it in this entire interview. If I'm going to have proper self-care, I got to know my limits. I got to have boundaries, as you said. So I need to understand, hey, if I need to take a break, I need to take a break. And that's healthy. If I cannot have notifications on, then maybe I don't need to have them on because it keeps me from checking my phone every 5 seconds. Then I think that that's healthy. Um, Going back to your point though about the way people perceive us and maybe engage in these conversations, let's say in bad faith, if it's the feminine angerous, is that how you said it?
Yeah.
The feminine angerous. Um, to me, I would look at it and say, anytime we're engaging in a conversation with anybody, like we want to do it in good faith, meaning I'm going to genuinely believe that you want us to understand and learn about each other, not that you're trying to hit me with a bunch of talking points, or you're trying to deceive me, you're trying to deceive
Yep.
the audience, what have you. I genuinely want to learn about you. We can still have opposing views, we can still disagree, but I want to learn about you. And I will say, I think that we are in a very interesting time where it seems like while we, again, support and encourage women's rights, women's empowerment, I will be the first to say that I support that. I do think right now it seems like it's coming at a cost. And
Yeah.
maybe the cost is our ability to coexist peacefully.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because maybe we're looking at each other in oppositional way instead of trying to figure out ways to work more smartly together. Not, again, not a kumbaya that we agree with everything. That's not real for any people, any society, any country. That just doesn't happen. There's never perfect harmony, but we can do a bit better than what we are doing
Yeah.
today.
Yeah.
So I would definitely agree with you there. I'm not online on those things as much, so I don't see it as much, but I will say I do hear a lot about the men online and their reactions to what they say that they experience and they see. And I do hear a lot about men feeling like they aren't needed, and that um, maybe in some cases that we're not desired, that
Yeah.
we're sort of disposable. And I certainly wouldn't want either of us to feel that we're not needed, desired, or it would benefit us and our societies at large to coexist much more peacefully and collaboratively. But I think we're at this interesting inflection point where I'm not sure exactly how it's going to play out. There's been a lot of
Yeah.
social dynamics that have happened with like the Me Too movement, and women being believed for different experiences that they've had. And again, I support those things in terms of we need to have those things be looked into to determine if somebody's being wrong. We need to make sure we have justice for that person. But what we also don't want at the same time, though, is we don't want to demonize people just because seemingly we feel like a minor infraction or we feel like we were somewhat slightly mistreated. Those things are going to happen. And I'm not saying it like we should wipe our hands of those, like it's no big deal. But I think there's a lot of conflation of those things. I had maybe a slightly inopportune experience, or this didn't go exactly the way I wanted, and I feel like um, this person took advantage of me and they used me or they abused me and things like that. Like that language feels very inflammatory at times. And
Mm.
so I think we can do a better job of really distinguishing between these different examples that I'm hearing from other men, really, in all transparency. It's not a lot of women that I hear because I don't like follow a bunch of women, so I don't know what you all may talk about. But listening to you say that does give a little more confirmation to what I've heard the men say,
Yeah.
that they feel largely attacked. And this podcast and this platform is not necessarily about any opposing group. Like I don't support that at all. I want us to work together.
Mm.
So I hear a lot of miscommunication. That's my point. I hear a
Yeah.
huge breakdown in communicating what we really want, what we really need. And I think we need to do a better job of really articulating what it is that we're looking for, our expectations, and
Yeah.
then how can we find a way to come more to resolution to better understand each other and then have a better function between each other. So that I think is one of those areas when it comes maybe to social media for an individual, whether male or female, that we do a better job of understanding our limits and our boundaries so we don't take on so much that maybe we end up, I would say, personifying a persona, becoming this thing that people are saying like it is like this. So you end up just becoming that person. And it's not, the crazy thing sometimes is it's not even your lived experience. Like
Mm.
somebody else is telling you that, and you just sort of take on the mantle as if it happened to me, so this is why you should do X, Y, and Z.
Yeah.
And not because somebody else said that and you might look up to them, but you didn't have your own experience to confirm or deny whether that might have been accurate.
Yeah.
So I think that we got to do maybe a better job of, again, being very curious. I like using that word because there's no inherent negative attitude towards it. If
Yeah.
I just ask
Absolutely.
you more questions and I genuinely want to understand, I think we'll have much more productive dialogue
Yeah.
and less trying to find ways to maybe find clickbait or trying to catch somebody and expose them to a certain degree. I don't think that's good for us as a people, as a society, as a world.
Mm.
So I think we need to do a better job of that.